How you doing, Afro Comic Con? I'm here today with Dany Quick and Wally McNair. How y'all doing today?
Doing pretty
Good,
good. Thank
good.
you, Chris.
Happy to be here,
Pretty
brother.
good. Happy to be here. Glad we're all surviving, especially during these surreal times. But I'm glad to be on here with you guys, especially since this is my first Afro Comic Con panel. So I really appreciate it. And to start off, I'm going to say welcome to the Black Creators Reclaiming Art Space to Create panel Afro Comic Con Virtual 2020 event. And thank you for joining us. Please consider donating to the AFCC Moonshot Junior Program that funds young girls of color to go through a 12-month program where they will learn tech skills, innovation, product development, and entrepreneurship. Please click the donation link. Any amount will help, and they'll have more information on the website. With this panel, I'm more so wanting to be like a roundtable with the three of us talking about art, inspirations, and artistic practices, because there tends to be this notion to censor Blackness when it comes to art. It always has to be us talking about like some form of struggle or whatnot. Not saying that, not happening, because you always face adversity every day, but there's other ways to censor Blackness when it comes to expressing ourselves. So I'm thinking we can just go around, say a bit about like what we like to do, our practices and whatnot.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having us on, Chris. This is my first Afro Comic Con panel too. I'll introduce myself first if you don't mind. I'm Dany Quick. I'm the co-creator of Ace Blade and in King Supreme. With Wally McNair. He helps me out with the art stuff. I myself am more of a writer, but I am a graphic designer. And I try. I'm not quite Carice and Wally, but I try. And when I saw your panel, I was really intrigued because I've been thinking recently about that also. It seems like recent years there's been this push to kind of keep Black folks in the Black folk block box, saying write about, people want Black people to write from their experiences, of course, but at the same time there's been thousands of years of people outside of the Black experience writing the Black experience. So why can't I write whatever I want to write? So I appreciate you having us. I appreciate you having us on this panel, and I can't wait to get into it.
Awesome.
What's good? I'm happy to be here as well. I'm an illustrator, writer, but I don't really put myself in the category of writers. But I tell the stories that I feel good telling. You know what I mean? And I see it like years ago. I used to feel like if you weren't doing something that had to do with Africa or mask or something in that lane, then you weren't considered a Black artist, which I always battled against, because I feel like if I'm Black and I'm telling a story, then it's Black art. Like regardless of what that story is and where it's coming from, we shouldn't have to only fit into certain categories and that's it. Like if we want to tell a story about a character that happens to be Black and they're a knight, then that's the story that we want to tell. If we want to tell a story about someone who's a magician, like, because at the end of the day, historically, we've been a part of almost everything that's happened in the world in some form or fashion. Even if we're talking about right. So even in the imaginative state, I just feel like we shouldn't have to. We do have to fight to be for the respect and to be seen at certain times, which is why we often stick Black on there somewhere. But that's only because we haven't had the open door for so long that now that we got it, we're trying to make sure it's understood, like we hear. But I 100% agree, like we shouldn't be limited to, I can only tell a story of this aspect of life that is considered the typical life or the typical thing that Black people do or go through or whatever. It shouldn't be like, when I was young, we had TV shows that spanned a wide range of life. It wasn't just people growing up in one particular neighborhood or one particular thing, and I enjoyed seeing all that because it opened up the door. Good Times is one of my favorite shows, but that represented a world that I actually was coming from. But then you had other shows that like girlfriends, and later on, Brains joined up with the Cosbys, aside from whatever's going on with Bill, but the show itself, or a different world that showed this other experience that I hadn't yet stumbled upon. So it was cool to see, and it also motivated me in other ways. And even in the imaginative world, it's terrible when you see all these movies about space and there's one black person. You know what I'm saying? If that, you know what I mean? Right. So I'm with you 100% on that.
I didn't know you were a fan of Girlfriends, so I'm gonna write that down for later.
Bro, hey, listen, Girlfriends is one of the great. My wife is rewatching that now. Like, it's one of the greatest shows.
It's a clutch show. It's a clutch show. It really is.
That and Living Single.
Yeah, absolutely.
I personally didn't watch Living Single religiously, but my mom did. So I did catch a couple episodes here and there. So I know enough of the nuances with it.
It's still good today. It's still good today if you want to go back and watch it. It's still watchable. The last season was not great, but everything up to that was classic.
Right.
But both of y'all made really good points. I think for me, I'm an illustrator and graphic designer, but do mostly illustration work. And the type of work I do kind of spans like all kinds of categories, like talking about like gender expression, sexuality, but also talking about the Black experience. And I think for the outside looking in, seeing our work, knowing that like, yes, we can speak on the Black experience because we want to, but that's not all that we can do. Like, we have like a whole arsenal of what we can do. And sometimes I do see this algorithm where if I'm posting something speaking on a Black experience or any form of intersectionality that goes with being Black, that tends to get more notice to it. Whenever I start to venture away from that, it doesn't get as much notice. So it's like, part of me is like, it is valid of everything I'm doing because I want to do it, but in some of it getting a certain level of attention because it's like a form of pity or so used to that narrative we've been seeing in media and whatnot. But I do see some shows trying to venture out and showing Black characters and not just struggling narrative. Like, what's that show called? Like Craig of the Creek?
Yeah. And Craig
I never
really show.
I've seen clips here and there, but it's just so fun to see like this fun-loving kid who is also Black doing all these things and is the main character.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And don't be wrong, I do like seeing like shows that talk about the Black experience, like The Proud Family and Boondocks and whatnot, which is really good. But it's nice seeing other facets of that.
Right.
I agree with you. I think especially now, I think we had it seemed like a long period of time, but I'm sure it was only 5 or 6 years where there just wasn't much for us besides, because we had the whole 90s, early 2000s where we had shows everywhere. We had stuff on UPN and WB and all over the place. We had all these shows. And then it just seemed like it all died off. And then now, that us, the people that were watching that stuff, I don't know how old y'all are, but I'm 35. So, when I was small, I was watching that stuff. And now that I'm a creator, I'm making stuff that, isn't quite that, but it's influenced by that. So I think it's cool that now we have the opportunity to, to keep pushing the envelope. On your Instagram, Carice, I see like a lot of your stuff I feel like is influenced by anime. I seen you did the Zuko Todoroki mashup. I saw that, I saw your your Avatar, your team Avatar. I saw all your work, and I'm like, yo, that's the stuff that I loved. I love Dragon Ball Z coming up. I loved, my kids put me on to My Hero Academia, and then that stuff also influences the things that I create now. So I think it's cool that we can kind of fuse everything that we were brought up on and create something new.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. And I think that's part of the weird dynamic, because we're having this, they're calling it a rebirth, but I think we've always been here. It's just more people are starting to pay attention. And we're trying to figure out how to balance it all to where we're telling the stories and we're keeping certain aspects of the history alive, but we're also showing that we can be in these spaces that we often get left out of. And it's not to go against anybody, it's just to say, look, the same way that a white creator might just place something that looks like them in a time period that comes from wherever, whenever, we want to do the same thing and not be questioned about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we want to do the same thing and just be telling the story. And if it just happens to fit this, you watch a commercial and there's 30 white people in the commercial, half of them in the background you don't really pay attention to. No one is mad about it and questioning it. So if we do the same thing, it's just creating the habitats and environments. And if we and we're probably more quick to diversify. Me and Dany, years back when we first started working together, I think I asked him, like, yo, why don't, no, he was saying to me, like, yo, I just want to make sure my stuff is open to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, because he had characters that were white, black, whatever. And I was like, cool. But right now I'm focused on their blackness. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just kind of where I was at the time. But it was still like, but I understood his point. Like, his goal wasn't to alienate anybody, but he also wanted to make sure he was uplifting black people. And I think we fall into this weird place where we have this struggle of, we grew up on all of this and we grew up watching all this stuff without seeing a bunch of us reflected in it, regardless of what history says, regardless of what actually happened in certain environments and certain cultural situations. And it's cool to see an Avatar Aang. It's cool to see, you know, Goku from a different planet, but he still reflects, even though it's a Japanese thing, he still reflects in most people's eyes, you know, characteristics of a white person. So if we flip it and tell our stories that have these other characters, it shouldn't really be questioned. It shouldn't be looked at like, oh, now y'all are trying to squeeze yourself. Like, no, we were already in these spaces. And if we weren't in these spaces, why shouldn't we be in these spaces, you know?
And that's one thing that's always seems to happen. There's always backlash when it comes to reclaiming our Black space and putting us into those like fictional settings, because like you said, we've been there from the beginning. So why are people getting upset that we're just saying that we are here too? And I think like our overall is always in some way, shape, or form a social commentary, but sometimes question, why is the very fact that they're saying that we are here as social commentary when that should be the norm? Like, if there's like a white person here, then cool. Someone who's Latinx, cool. Asian, Black, cool. Like you said, elevating at all the same levels. So I think it's important to you know, as artists, like showing our spin on it and like having somebody younger than us seeing like those Black or POC characters, because I'm only 23 and I can like name like the Black character out there too, like on my hands, like Cyborg, Proud, Huey from Boondocks, and even now it's kind of fuzzy who I can remember, but it just shows is like we just have that limited options of who we can look up to. And the more we can show up us, the more heartening it could be to the youth instead of like disheartening.
Yeah, I mean, I get excited, and I get excited if my kids show me a new anything and there's somebody that looks like they have any pigment in their skin. Like, I'm immediately like, oh snap, like what is this? And it's not because I'm against anything else, but I've seen everything that's been in existence for I've seen Superman and Batman and Peter Parker. So of course when the Miles Morales pops up, people are gonna lose it, like, yo, like,
Miles Morales.
You know what I'm saying? And but still, like you said, like we could put our fingers up together and collectively we only have so many things we can name, especially that's mainstream, that's like really out there and on a certain pedestal. And that's probably also why whenever something does hit, we try to lift it up so high, you know, like what happened with Black Panther. Like, but it's ridiculous that it took all of that time for us to finally get something on that scale, you know what I mean? And that is the only thing outside of Blade. And we can, you know, again, we can pick things here and there, and culturally we have classics that we know about, but on a grand life scale, it's very limited, and it really shouldn't be. But I guess that's also why, you know, we're pushing so hard now, especially since there's so much more light being turned on us, whether it's been turned on us for the right reasons or not. And like you said, like when you post certain things, and it's also, for me, it's a tough thing because you're proud of who you are and you want to make that known, and at the same time, you're not trying to step on anybody. But if somebody comes for you for doing it, you're like, yo, hold up. Like, I'm doing this because this is who I am and I'm proud of it. I wouldn't be mad at you if you were standing up for what you are, who you are. But we have to balance that sometimes, because especially in the business side of things, because we never know who's paying attention to what we're doing. Me personally, I'm quick to be like, yo, it's whatever. Like, either you with me or you not. But I understand that we probably constantly lose support just because we're speaking for who we are, without trying to offend anybody else, just simply saying, yo, I'm black and I'm proud. And somebody's like, what? You're black and you're proud? Oh.
And then the other thing too, I want to get y'all's opinion on is, there was this whole period of time where people were like, oh, don't make Iron Man black, don't make Thor black. You know, there's this whole make your own, you know, thing. And when you were talking about, you know, not having many characters that are mainstream that look like us, that made me think about that. There was it seemed like a whole, not agenda, I want to say, but a whole push to you know, keep, you know, black characters out of the mainstream. And I think I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I feel like there are people out there who actively seek, you know, that kind of thing. They actively want to oppress, you know, blackness in media. And that's one of the things that really bothers me about, you know, creating and starting our own characters. Me and Wally, you know, he worked with me on, you know, 2 H-Blade books, and you know, we work on King Supreme. He actually was the one to convince me to make King Supreme black in the first place. So, but you know, now we're working on you know, more King Supreme books and Super Bastard.
Well, you got to give context to that. So King Supreme has a lot of Egyptian, African elements to it, and when Dany first introduced it to me, you can't see his face because of the mask, and I'm thinking he's a black kid automatically, like whoever's in there is black, you know, but it can be whoever. It was kind of like one of those Spider-Man things. Once the mask is on, it could technically be whoever. And then Danny's like, oh no, he's white, and I was like, what? Like, it just threw me for a loop a little bit, you know.
And honestly, that's a good point, because when it comes to adding ambiguity to a character, we can't see like skin tone or facial features, whatnot. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, usually like the majority tends to assume the person is white, and that in a way is damaging. It's a form of, like, honestly, like white supremacy in its own way. And going back to like people going upward, like, oh, this superhero can't be black, this superhero can't be like redrawn or reimagined black. Well, it's almost like a lose-lose. It's like, you don't want us to like, cosplay your white characters, give us more black characters. Oh, you don't want to give us more black characters, so what to do? It's just always those nuances of keeping us on the sidelines, which is really horrible.
I think, and the biggest thing with that used to bother me when that was happening, I would see people say, why don't y'all just make your own characters? And I'm like, cool, we do, but we don't get the same support. And you know, Marvel's been around for 50, 60 years. So this is a lifetime that they've had to build these characters up when we couldn't get into the spotlight and do those things. You know, I mean, there was a time when you had Milestone Comics. There was the Brother Man comic that came at one point. But even with the success those things had, it was still minute compared to the bigger conglomerates. So it's like, if we've had these characters for all this time, from whenever we were born to whatever, we've been shown Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Of course, we're going to want to take part in that. It's a part of the culture. You know what I mean? Like, we just happen to be black. It's not our fault that we didn't have a version of those characters there was. So if someone's going to cosplay or draw or decide, I want to see what this would look like in this way. You know, even with Wonder Woman, I started doing Nubia pieces years back before a lot of people started paying her attention, and people would say, oh, you're making the Wonder Woman black. And I'm like, dang, they really don't know. So I started at conventions trying to educate people on the fact that Nubia has always existed. She just kind of got moved to the side and forgotten about, and the spotlight was on Diana, you know what I'm saying? And you would see the pride growing in people that now they could go and dress up like Wonder Woman, but be Nubia, you know what I'm saying? Like, and have something that has been this from the beginning, and not have to just say, well, I'm a Black Wonder Woman, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it shouldn't be any harm in us doing that, any more than a white kid who's blonde putting on a wig to be Superman with his black hair, you know what I mean? Like, it's just figuring out how to put yourself in that identity, into something that you identify with, and however you identify it with. But of course, we would love to have characters that are upper echelon and always in the spotlight and everything as well. It's just, it's a tough fight for us to get it there. You know what I mean? But we're working on it. Definitely working on it.
We're working on it.
Definitely working on it.
Definitely are. I wanted to ask y'all about the other side of it though, because one thing, like I mentioned at the beginning, that bothers me today is that there's a push for us to. All right, so there's a whole push for people to write from their experiences, right? You got, you know, I don't even want to call the name of the group out, but they're all about, you know, not putting politics in the comics, you know, not making political. Don't hire, you know, Black people just because they're Black, or don't hire Asian people just because they're Asian and you want to put Asian people on your books or whatever. But at the same time, for the past 70 years of comics, there were other groups of people writing Black Panther, and the few Black characters that we did have were written by not people of color. So if I get a job to write a comic and I want to write Deadpool, I should be able to write Deadpool, right? He's a white guy. He's a white guy who has a, you know, a long backstory. If he's one of my favorite characters and I do the research, I should be able to do it. I feel like I should be able to do that. But it seems like now there's a, you know, a push for not to stay in your lane, but don't cross especially if you're Black, write from your experience. You know, you're creating your own characters, you're doing all of this stuff. Cool. Dany, write Ace Blade. You can write Ace Blade, but don't write anything else. Have y'all experienced that, or have y'all seen that, or is that just me and my conspiracy mind?
I definitely seen it. I'm almost like to like reel back the question. Like, for example, like with the idea of like people reaching out to you because you fit this checkbox, but completely ignore your other facets. My roommate of mine, who's also a close friend, they're trans and non-binary artists. They've done a lot of work, really good work too. But we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. Is like, what's the kind of narrative people kind of push on us when they reach out to us when they want to commission us? And they're wondering, are they reaching out to me because of my skill set with art, or they just need a transgender artist? And that is damaging in itself, because you're just kind of limiting this person into one box, and they're more than their identity. They're a multifaceted person with, you know, a whole skill set of art. And when it comes to, you know, if you got commissioned to do some Deadpool comics, like, are they going to go about it because you have a skill set with art? Are there other factors playing into it? But it's always like those nuances that are always so subliminal that we don't notice until it's too late sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I've dealt with it and probably didn't realize it in some of the occasions, like somebody will reach out and say, hey, I want you to do a Black Panther piece for me. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But then you sort of think about it and you're like, wait a minute, Black Panther? What you got?
It's so hard. It's such a hard dynamic to think about. Because honestly, I'd be thrilled to work on some Black Panther comics, but it's like, wait, why are they reaching out to me?
Right.
It's one of those waiting for them to explain themselves and see where they're coming from. You never know. Maybe they'll be like, oh, we saw your portfolio. We saw how good your art is. Other times, it might be like those little subliminals, like, I don't know, we just feel like you would do really good with this, which that in itself is a kind of microaggression.
Yeah, we feel like you fit. I got a meeting tomorrow with a company who, from everything I can understand, they're only reaching out to Black artists in their mind because they want to put Black artists in better positions to do things. But I can't help but look at the other side of it. How much media are you going to get out of using only the Black artists. You know what I mean? So it's always this weird thing again where it's like my wife gets on me, not gets on, but she's always like, you know, you gotta figure out your balance, because you're trying to fight for the whatever, but at the same time you're trying to be a working artist, and you got to figure out how to use this system to your advantage, and however that may be, unless it does go against your morals completely, you know. So
yeah, but honestly, we as Black folks are some like resilient beings. So I think we start to see if someone's truly uplifting us or trying to save us or give us like some help when we don't need help. You just be uplifted. And I'm glad you brought that up with like people reaching out to like Black artists, because one thing I realized since the beginning of quarantine and during the multiple murders of like our Black family, all of a sudden I see this like surge of making sure that like Black and POC artists are getting uplifted and whatnot, talking about like the dynamics of how white folks are have better chances of being employed at like art gigs and whatnot. Part of me had to do with that duality is like, okay, the conversation is starting to be talked about with like the disadvantage Black artists have and POC artists, but it's like, does part of it seem performative? This is all happening at once in a small like period of time during quarantine. It like kind of started to be talked about in 2020 when this has always been happening.
Right.
It does kind of seem performative, but I try to my 12-year-old just learned what optimism and pessimism is in her class, and it's crazy that like I had to explain to her the difference. But this is where me and Wally are different, because I know his answer is gonna be different. Okay, so I'm always optimistic when it comes to, you know, people reaching out for work and people trying to, you know, say, yo, we want to put a spotlight on you for this and that. And I feel like it never takes long for people to expose themselves. To me, it doesn't take long for people to, you know, that light to get shined and somebody be like, you was only doing this because you wanted to press, or you was only doing this, but your Facebook status says you hate Black people. So, you know, that stuff never takes long. So I try to take opportunities and at least get what I can, you know, do what I can with it. And if you know, if they expose themselves, I've never had the negative backlash from that. You know, I just had a situation where, you know, my other partner, Morgan, he was working with an artist, and, you know, he was always giving this man work and, you know, putting all this money in this man's pocket, and found out that he could care less about the Black community, and some of the things that he was sharing online were just, it was just really, you know, right there on the edge. So,
oh my God,
you know, he had to, you know, make a decision to, you know, stop working with him. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, saw it his way. A lot of people saw it the other guy's way. But, you know, that stuff never takes a long time to come to light. And the more information you got, the better choices you can make.
I don't disagree with that. What are you talking about? I'm just a little more vocal. Like, if I don't go out and start trouble or chaos, but I come from an environment where, you know, you got to hold your own to a certain degree, and you hold people accountable when they expose whatever, however that may be. You know, you hold people accountable. I come from a world where you don't say and do things if you're not prepared to answer for it. So if I'm going to say certain things online, I need to be prepared if someone approaches me about that in person. And if I'm going to try to hustle somebody in some negative manner, I must be accepting to whatever the consequences may be if they catch me somewhere slipping and they're like, yo, you remember when I paid you to do, and, you know, whatever. I just believe in principles. And I know the world doesn't always work by morals and principles, but I believe in that, and I uphold that, and I treat everybody around me as good as I can, and I'm always trying to be open to understanding if I don't understand. But then they tell you I'm not a troublemaker, but I don't bite my tongue either. So if someone
I
comes to
agree. I
me,
get that.
you know what I mean? Like when they started doing
Exactly.
the Black Lives Matter murals here, and I got contacted about it, my first question was, are you paying the Black artists? It's not enough for you to put people on TV and they're painting murals. Malcolm X said in the 60s, they'll pacify you with anything. You know what I mean? So you can't just accept anything. We're still fighting the same fights. So I immediately reached out to the younger cats who were taking it and like, yo, make sure you're getting what you're supposed to get out of this besides being there smiling in front of the camera when the media shows up. Because you may look at it as exposure, but they're going to get so much more. Are there grants involved in this? Is there funding coming from somewhere? Like, you should be getting treated the same way that any other artist that would be hired would be getting treated, period. Yes, it's beautiful to see Black Lives Matter on the street. That is a wonderful thing. But we also got Martin Luther King signs in every neighborhood and almost in the United States. And that man ain't here no more. So what does that tell us about some of this signage? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it just comes down to finding your balance. There's the business, and then there's being Black. You know what I'm saying? And figuring out how that works. But I am very quick to hold people accountable, or at least ask the questions. I don't feel like we should be afraid or hesitant to ask those tough questions when we need to, you know, and that's something you got to decide upon yourself. Like, is this a big deal or not? And can I use this to my advantage? You know what I mean? Like, if they're calling you because you're the popular Black artist right now, do you say no and go the other way because you don't want to? Or do you say yeah and use it to, you know, pivot yourself into another position that may in turn put you in a place to help somebody else that's trying to come up or do whatever, you know? So it's always this weird balance that we got to do. But like you said, we're very resilient people. So we keep pushing and keep fighting regardless. I just want us to understand, even amongst ourselves, that it's okay for us to have differences and to support those differences, you know, and keep pushing, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of trash movies that come out from white people. There's a lot of trash books that come out, and they still come out because they know there's an audience somewhere for it if we put it out there. So all of us aren't going to make the greatest, you know, whatever, and it's okay. We don't all have to make the greatest whatever. What I do might not be for everybody. What you do might not be, but there's an audience. If we can, what was that thing, the Snuggie, that weird blanket thing? Like, people laughed at that thing, but the people creating it said, you know what? If we put it in front of enough people, we'll find the audience for it, and there'll be a reason for it to exist. You know what I mean?
Millionaires at this point.
Really? Off of something that was a joke.
off a blanket with sleeves this day.
A blanket with sleeves.
It's getting cold outside too. I might go find me a Snuggie.
Now, Carice, I know for you, I imagine that you have even another layer of that dynamic that you have to work through sometimes, and I can't imagine the difficulty of navigating that the world of always, but especially today with social media making something so front street. Like, how do you balance it?
Could you clarify balance, like how often I'm putting work out?
Just internally, like, what do you, like, for me, some mornings I just have to wake up and just say, you know what, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? Whatever is out there, however it's coming, like, I'm here. And that says a lot. So let me just get it together and boom, like, move, you know what I mean? So, like, is it the same for you, or is it kind of like a ritual? Like, I grab my tea some mornings and I just sit down and you know, look at the children. My children run through and cause chaos, and I'm like, at least I get to see this chaos, despite however the world might view me, see me, whatever. Like, how do you balance it?
Oof, how do I balance it? I would say it's equal parts, like, very organized and sporadic, but they somehow married itself. Some mornings, others get up, make some tea or whatnot, watch a little bit of a show. I've been watching just to, like, you know, get me relaxed before I jump onto my Cintiq or Procreate or whatnot. Other mornings I would just bike ride. Um, Sometimes hop on the switch. But I think the most helpful one is talking to other artists
Right.
because it's just like that level of just like they get it. They just understand.
Right.
Like if there's days where you just like sit on the couch, other days you're drawing, and they see like those fluctuations.
Right.
No words need to be exchanged. They just kind of get it. But it feels good to vent about it. That's why I'm very grateful to have an artist as a roommate because we could just talk about that as like talk about projects we're working on, talk about why we're stressed out, but then dial it back to okay, we're putting out more than enough work, so we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. Kind of chuckle about that whole dynamic, and then just go about it. It was for me like training not to be too hard on myself, and the work I'm putting out is enough. And only person I'm really competing against myself is myself.
Right.
Trying to elevate myself with my art and whatnot. And I got to a point where I kind of look back at some of my old artwork and then look at more recent work and see that level of improvement. And it's like, I mean, I can't give up now because if I gave up then, like I would never expected my art to be where it is right now.
Right. Right.
I think that's good. The thing that you said about having somebody to talk to, there's a big push about mental health especially in the Black community now. And I went to, I don't know if you know, but I'm army. I was in the Army for 12 years, and I was deployed to Iraq. And even during the deployment, there were only 3 other Black people there. So it was already stressful enough just being in Iraq and having to work with the military police, but then to come back, and then start trying to be a creator. There's a whole lot that even my wife doesn't understand, even though I try to talk to her, she tries her best to listen. And then, as a creator, trying to create a whole new character and brand and tell a story, from scratch, it's a whole nother area. So it's always great to have somebody like people like y'all that I can talk to about art when, my wife or my children may not understand, or, my pastor may not understand. I think it's very, very important to at least have somebody that can communicate and empathize with you, at the very least. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, community is truly important, especially talking to other Black artists specifically. There's always having to deal with that duality. It's like being Black, being an artist. Why do we have to choose when we can just be both?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, like a total side note with like asking like my process, how I'm going about doing art. I mean, I have like my mom, like very like Black mom, like, well, you better not give up kind of moment. And I'm like, okay. Because she would honestly like murder me if I give up.
And then especially now, the point that you're at now, which I think is just really the beginning, even though, it took a while to get to where you are today, but just imagine where you will be in a couple more years as long as you just stay being you and keep with the process. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, this is the beginning of a new chapter. 2020 is that turn of leaf, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Well deserved though. Well deserved. I got to check out some of your work, and it's like, it's top notch and beyond.
Like I said, Reese, make sure you let me know when the commission list open back up. Wally will tell you I'm always trying to pay somebody to draw something. So
I will give Dany the supportive. The support he gives to artists and creators is unmatched. Like, and I'm not saying that because I know, before I knew the dude like that, I would just watch online how many times he would commission artists or support projects that were coming out, and I'm like, yo, this dude probably has no money because he gives it to everybody every day. And then when I met his wife, I was like, yo, T, you be letting him, like, and she was like, I gave him a budget. And he sticks to that budget.
That's right. You stick to the budget. As long as I stick to the budget, me and Tiana cool. But I think we got. I think we got a couple minutes left. I wanted to see what y'all were working on before we get out of here. I know we're pushing up against this time limit, but I just wanted to see what you guys are working on. Wally, I know you got something coming up. Carice, your commission list is closed, like I said, so I know you working on something too. I just want to get that shout out if we can before we get out of here.
So one of the projects I'm working with this lawyer that I met actually last year when I was at Starbucks in Connecticut. Some of my artwork was hanging up and whatnot, and we were just talking, and now I'm doing illustrations for her website. And that's really good to do because like seeing like a Black lawyer reach out to a Black artist to add with their website is so inspiring. I can actually show you some of it if I can. I'm gonna do a little screen share. Oh, see if I can screen share it. Oh, so it's disabled.
I don't know why. Let me see. I don't know. Multiple. Oh, there. Hold on. There it is. Hold on. Let's try it now.
All right.
Daniel's been a gatekeeper.
I didn't know. I don't do Zoom. I be trying to figure it out.
So this is what I have for her so far. And it was Nicole Christie. And this is like a practice banner I did for her upcoming YouTube and Facebook channel.
That's fresh. I like it.
Super dope.
Portrait herself. She's really charismatic. I'm really grateful to be working with her. And she works with DCF and kids and whatnot. So she wanted a shot of children together.
Oh, right.
And the third one is her nephew.
Okay.
With the pink jacket.
Mm-hmm.
That's fresh.
And the other project we're working on, this gaming podcast reached out to me named Skyjacks, and they wanted to do some headshots, a group shot, action shot of their pirate characters. It's very Treasure Planet, but this is the 5 characters.
Oh wow, that's fresh.
Yeah, love the facial expressions.
Yeah.
I know. I was really trying to like push the envelope with the description they gave me. Like for this one, we want him to look kind of timid. He's the head captain that's like dripped in jewelry and gold.
Right.
He's a very demure one, more like. And this is like the young kid of the group who's up and coming.
Oh, that's fresh. I like it.
Yeah.
He has like a magic eye.
Yeah, that's dope.
That.
That's super dope. I love the expressions, the energy, the choice of colors, everything.
Thank you. And the lavender. Had to go for like kind of cocky and charismatic, but mostly cocky.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can see that.
You can see the confidence pouring out of the cup. You ain't
supposed to be showing us none of this, are you? I appreciate it. You don't know, but they call me Team Spoiler Alert because I like to gather information on stuff that's coming out. So
that's okay. I already asked him beforehand if I can talk about it.
Okay.
Because Dany will put everything everywhere before you get the chance to see it.
Because I am not trying to be in court.
Right. You could be literally still drawing it, and Dany will somehow get it and put it out to the world, and you'd be like, yo, I'm not even finished with it yet. I didn't even. Dany's the spoiler.
Not mad at it. Not mad at it.
Hey, I'll just be trying to support. Well, if you do get in trouble with the law, you got Miss Nicole Christie to help you out, so you'll be all right.
I'm not a child.
That's true. What about you, Wally? I know you got your Once Emperors brand launching pretty soon. What else you got?
Ooh.
Yeah, so Once Emperors in a nutshell is the title is just to reinstate that idea of who we once were, as people, and not forget that. Because so often our history starts with slavery and then tries to move forward. And it's like, but there was a time prior to that. And there's the time that we live in now. And to me, kings, queens, whatever, we're royalty if we choose to take that mantle. So that's kind of the idea behind the title. And I just want to make sure that books that I put out, whether it's just straight stuff that I'm doing, stuff I'm doing with other companies, other people, whatever, there's ownership and there's a pride in what we're doing and whatever the stories are and whatever we're covering in those stories. So King Supreme is one of the books I got with you, now that we got him on track. We did a Kickstarter for it last year that raised $6,000, which was the most I've ever done for a Kickstarter. So I was very happy to see that happen with Dany's help, because he'd be on TikTok missing dunks and stuff. So we're bringing more support in. And then we got the Super Bastard book, which is a personal project that I've been kind of working on for a while. But it's kind of my take on, for lack of anything else to directly compare it to, my take on if Superman had came to the planet Black and grew up with a whole different state of mind, seeing things in a different way, and the evolution of a character who saw the world one way and then starts to realize there's so much more to it, good and bad. And when absolute power realizes it's not absolute, what happens? You know what I'm saying? So those two books are launching Friday. One campaign, both books, so people can kind of pick and choose what is more of their flavor, what story kind of vibes with them well. And got a lot of other cool things in there. Some people just aren't about the books, but they like the art. So we got skate decks, hoodies, t-shirts, enamel pins. Like, yeah, we're going the merch route. You know, we want to make sure people can walk away. Because the other thing about, for me, with branding is just trying to make it things that people are proud to have. You know what I mean? Like, if you put that Crown logo t-shirt on or that hoodie on, you know, me and Dany's slogan is own your crown, harness your destiny. So when you put that crown on, like, you're taking control of who you are and you're speaking for who you are. So that's how any of the branding, the merch that I do, I always try to make it something a person can be proud of beyond the books. So if you're not big on comics, there can be some aspect of it that you still are like, yo, I'm proud of this, I stand with this, and make it more of a lifestyle thing. So that's the main thing, man. Just trying to get this thing launched and hope that it's successful beyond my imagination, and just keep going, because I really like inspiring and pushing other people around me and other creators to just keep creating. Like at the end of the day, I've had a lot of conversations with big companies. Some go great, some don't. But one thing that's been consistent is my ability to keep pushing myself. Same thing you were saying, Carice. Like, you know, we're our own competition. And if we get out of our own way, there's no limits to what we can accomplish. You know what I mean? Failure is only when we quit. So, yeah.
Absolutely. As long as I've known you, Wally, you've always been about that ownership thing. That's a real thing, man. And you've been speaking it into existence. And I appreciate you for that, man, because there's been a lot of times I wanted to quit. There's a lot of times I did quit, and Why'd be like, hey, shut up, pick it back up and make it work. So I appreciate you always pushing me, bro. For me, y'all know I got Ace Blade coming up. We're doing the villain season book where we introduce all of our villains. And it's gonna be crazy, but that's months off. So by the time you see this, you'll probably forgot about it in April. But I want to go ahead and close out, if that's cool with y'all. We appreciate y'all. We appreciate Afro Comic Con. We appreciate everybody putting this together. Again, please consider donating to the AFCC Moonshot Junior program that funds the young girls of color to go through a 12-month program where they will learn tech skills, innovation, product development, and entrepreneurship. All you gotta do is press the link, and any amount will help. So that's me, Danny J. Quick, Wally McNair, Carice Bowles. I finally said the name right.
Yeah, we've been listening and trying to make sure too. We couldn't get you if you didn't.
I'm out.
It's all good.
Let me